Hello, and welcome to Candidates Up Front. This is the public interest election program of Berks Community Television and the League of Women Voters of Berks County. I'm Judith Cranus, a member of the League. Our November 5th general election is coming up, and we will be voting for both state officials and federal officials. The deadline to register is Monday, October 21st. The League is interviewing candidates in contested races, those who wanted to be interviewed. And for each race, the candidates will get the same basic questions and will have the same amount of time to answer them.
Hello, I'm Sue Ruth, a member of the League of Women Voters in Berks County. Two candidates are competing in the 4th Congressional District, Democrat Madeline Dean and Republican David J. Winkler. The district is in the eastern Berks County, including Brownsville, Linebox, Greenfields, Kutztown, Muhlenberg, Colebrookdale, my home, Hereford, and most of Montgomery County. The U.S. House of Representatives proposes and passes federal laws which must also be approved by the U.S. Senate. They act on domestic and international issues. They serve 2-year terms and earn $174,000 per year, plus benefits and expenses. Please note, the opinions expressed in this interview are those of the candidate and are not the opinions of the League of Women Voters or of Berks Community Television. This interview is with David J. Winkler. He is the challenger. Welcome, David.
Thanks for having me, ma'am.
Mr. Winkler, please tell our viewers about yourself and why you're running for this office.
Okay, it's real simple about myself. I'm a combat veteran of 2 branches of service, both the United States Marine Corps and the United States Army. I'm also a former law enforcement officer, but who I am is just somebody that wants to give back to this country. I started off as in foster care, got adopted out of foster care, and ever since I've been having this, I wanted to give back for a country that was able to help me get out of that system and be able to become successful out of it. I'm running because we have a serious issue going on in the United States. We're so divided between red versus blue. We have a lot of issues going on in the United States, and I think that we need to elect somebody that's going to be the adult in the room on the Hill and just focus in on helping the people and no more of this divisive behavior.
What have you identified as your 2 most compelling issues on which, if elected, you feel you can make a difference?
So the number one issue that I focus on is economy. We really got to get after this inflation. We got to get after the high cost of every time we go down to the grocery store, it's like paying a mortgage payment. Caring about our children's future in that sense is where I got children right now, and I really want to set them up in a place where they can retire at a decent age and that they can, become successful. And I think so we got to really focus in on reckless spending, and it's just anything dealing with the economy. The second portion that I'm focused on is our world's on fire right now in the sense of foreign policy, and you're going to need that kind of strength from a veteran leadership standpoint on the Hill that understands whether it's Israel, Gaza, whether it is Ukraine, Russia, or anything really dealing with these foreign wars. I'm a subject matter expert on this stuff. So you're going to need somebody to help guide whoever is president through this. So,
what do you see as the 3 most critical issues facing Congress in this next term?
The 3 things that I would start off with, number 1 is our Congress is in complete shambles. They only care about themselves or their 5 minutes of fame they can get on Fox News or CNN or whatever it is, and they're so focused in on their own greed and getting reelected that they've forgotten about the people. So that's the first point. The second point is they need to get back within inside the Article 1 in the Constitution when it comes to voting. A lot of the things that they vote on or what they do is outside of the bounds of the Constitution. So we need to rein that back in. The third thing is the reckless spending. We got to stop the reckless spending. We're mortgaging our children's future right now, and we need to rein that in. And we look at that national debt. We got to reduce that national debt.
What is your philosophy on the responsibility of the United States in international issues? And if there's a continuum from isolation to full involvement, where do you place yourself on that spectrum?
Where I still, the veteran in me wants to make sure that we take care of the United States, service members, that we're not sending them over to these foreign conflicts, that we're not reckless in the way that we deal with, world politics. And where I sit on this is we help our allies, but not at the cost of hurting our American citizens. And so I sit kind of in the middle between America first, and when it comes to things like Israel, I do support Israel and carrying out those bilateral agreements that we have with them, taking care of them. When it comes to the Ukraine, Russia, I'm very skeptical on what's happening in the Ukraine-Russia war, because we need to make sure that Ukraine actually has a legitimate plan to hold off Russia, if not, expel Russia from Ukraine. But it doesn't seem like we have a really good strategy there. So we're going to need Congress this next session to really hone in on that and make sure that we get to the bottom of that and help Ukraine. So.
What do you think about whether or not the U.S. should act alone or work within coalitions?
I'm fine with the coalition aspect. Always have been. I've worked with NATO before, but I do agree more so with President Trump than Biden with it when it comes to holding our coalitions accountable, making sure that they're putting in the right amount of GDP, that they're not taking advantage of the United States service members. Back in 2008, I worked with NATO. A lot of NATO partners did not leave the base. They didn't actually get out and function and work with us. And that became a problem. So when it comes to that, I do believe that in our coalitions, I do believe in taking care of them, but they, at the same time, do not allow them to take advantage of us.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you to go a little deeper and give us your thoughts on how the U.S. should interact with China and Taiwan, Russia and Ukraine,
Okay.
Israel and Gaza.
So I don't know which one you want to start off with first, because those are a lot.
Yeah.
When it comes to Israel, I'll start off with that one, because that's one of the most important ones to me, is we, as the United States, need to support our ally Israel. They're one of the major U.S. non-NATO allies. We have a responsibility to take care of Israel in that aspect and make sure that they can carry out their war against Hamas. Yes, at the same time, make sure that try to carry out that war against Hamas without all the collateral damage and the civilian casualties. But I know who Hamas is. If you guys remember from my background, I fought Taliban face to face. I fought Al Qaeda face to face. I know who Hamas is, and so we got to make sure that we are taking care of our ally there. The other aspect, if I go into Ukraine and Russia, I do believe there needs to be a diplomatic intervention there, because Ukrainians are losing their young men. It's gotten to the point where it's going to be a rough rebuild if Ukraine, somehow wins this war, which I still think that they're losing the war right now unless we intervene. I think that we have to take a careful approach. We need to end it before Ukraine loses completely, and I think that you're going to need the tactician in Congress to be able to work that out. When it comes to China and Taiwan, I'm a huge protector of Taiwan. I believe China needs to leave Taiwan alone, but not at the expense of putting United States soldiers on ground or anything like that. I still think that China is more of a competitor than they are a true enemy to ours, and I do believe that we need to be tough in sanctions, tariffs, and we also need to start making things in America to counter China's efforts. We need to start opening up our manufacturing plants, whether it be steel, iron, plastics, and start making for ourselves.
Okay. Both parties say they're pro-family, but they propose and vote for very different things. What legislation do you feel is pro-family?
I'm of the mindset when I talk about pro-family, you're talking about somebody that came from foster care, got adopted out of that. Those are things that I'm looking at when it comes to pro-family. So I'm looking at helping out in things that are often ignored, like the family court system, custody, child support, keeping people together or trying to get the family units to stay together. I think that it's about time that we look at that as a whole, because I think that a lot of our court systems, when it comes to family, have stopped caring about the actual best interest of the child. And I think that that's where I'm focused in on is really kind of cracking down on neglect in the foster care system here in the United States, cracking down on child protective services that may be neglecting the kids. Just things like that is what I feel needs to happen, and I don't hear anybody talking about it. They talk about mothers' rights or women's rights, but there's also the father's rights and men's rights, and I think that both conversations need to be had at a congressional level to make sure that we're trying to keep families together instead of splitting them apart, and really focusing in on the best interest. Because, as I said, I was a foster care kid. And got adopted out of that. That was a beautiful thing. IVF is a beautiful thing, and I think that trying to help families, succeed is the best way to go. I think abortion and that always comes up the topic, but I think that we really need to focus in on how do we take care of the families that are here, rather than talking about more eugenics or abortion.
Can I just quickly ask you, one of the programs that a lot of women are interested in is programs that support them while they're pregnant and then after they've given birth.
Yeah.
And paid parental leave is one of them. I'm wondering, do you have any thoughts you want to add about those issues that are specifically
they're
for the family?
I'm a full supporter of paid maternal and paternal leave. I think that we really need to help those mothers out, and I think it's too short. I think that when you tell mothers it's like 3 months or 6 months or whatever, those are vital times in the mother's time to nurture the child. And I think that they should be given even more time when it comes to paid maternal leave. I think the same thing with a father. You probably give them 3 weeks or 4 weeks to be with that child. I think that the father needs to have more time, and I would absolutely support anything that keeps the mother and father around that child in those vital times.
Thank you. Well, here's another one that's hard.
Yeah.
What is the place of religion in politics, in education, and in government?
So I'm very much a constitutionalist. So what I would say is the Establishment Clause is the law. So I'm a Christian myself, but the role of it in politics is there's a separation of the church and state. Now I understand you can go back to James Madison and the letters to the Dansbury Baptist Church and all that, and you can go back to that time frame, and you'll hear arguments that there's no real separation of church and state, but I abide by the Establishment Clause, so you won't see me vote solely based upon religion. I think that I have to separate that and do right by the Constitution.
Okay, thank you. The ease of registering to vote, the ease of casting our ballots, and the power of our vote, they vary across state to state, and in part it's due to gerrymandering. As critical as the vote is to our American concept of democracy, should there be federal standards that protect our vote no matter where we live?
Yeah, I think that this is always a subject that comes up, and whether you sit on the right or the left, there's these different ideas on what needs to take place, but I would say right now is, yes, you're right that there's a problem with gerrymandering. There's a problem with the vote or election integrity in general. And I think that it's not hard to say, hey, one for one, make sure that there's an ID or you can verify that somebody is who they say they are when they're voting. I don't see that as voter suppression. I think that, when I go and buy an alcoholic whatever when I was 21, you would have to show your ID to be able to buy alcohol. You'd have to show, your ID to be able to drive if you're driving, you get a speeding ticket or whatever. There's various different things you got to show ID for. So I don't think it's a hard ask to say, hey, provide your ID when you're voting. The other thing is, right now my opponent Madeline Dean, is she was a huge proponent of allowing illegals into the census. And what she was trying to do is do it for redistricting purposes, which goes to what you were saying, which is gerrymandering the district by allowing all sorts of people that should not be added to the census involved in this political process.
Where do you stand on the Freedom to Vote and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act?
I have issues the way that it's currently laid out. Unless there's voter ID or in the election integrity piece in there, that's where I would vote no on it. We need to secure our elections here. There's a lot of issues going on with that, but other than that, if they add that to it, I'll be okay with it.
Okay. And then I have, I want to ask, since the 2020 election, at least 19 states have passed laws which in some ways make it harder for minorities to vote. More than 400 similar bills have been introduced across 48 states. What do we do with that?
So I'm a minority myself. You know, I'm half black and half Italian. I've lived in a lot of these Democrat cities where they tell me that my vote is being suppressed, right? But the way they do it has been very disrespectful. So we have to be honest with what's going on. When you tell me that I don't have the access, like Governor Hochul said in New York, that we don't have access to computers or don't know how to use computers, we don't know how to get down to DMVs, we don't have $20 to get a ride or whatever. That kind of behavior needs to stop. Everybody that I know around me, and I live inside a community with a big number of black voters or minority voters, we all have IDs. And so I found it disrespectful when they came out in that manner and said that I don't have the ability to or understand how to vote. That's just insane. I think what is real suppression is we're not given policies. The politicians nowadays, they go away from policies and they just do ad hominem attacks, and it leaves us wondering, who are we voting for? So, that's what I find as voter suppression is not allowing us to know who we're voting for.
Okay, thank you. Gun violence costs the U.S. $557 billion annually. That includes outfitting and training first responders against new and improved weapons, retrofitting buildings so that they can have added security, and it affects healthcare. 96% of gun violence related healthcare is shouldered by Medicare and U.S. employers through healthcare insurance plans. So gun violence is an inflationary economic pressure. Should Congress act on this issue? And if you think so, what should they do? What impact could you see them having on these issues?
So, when it comes to, I'll tackle this part first, is once again going with the Constitution. I'm a combat veteran who fought for this United States to uphold and defend the Constitution. The Second Amendment is equal as any other amendment. It shall not be infringed. Now, when I say that, I will also point to the Heller v. D.C. Decision back in 2008 where weapons in common use cannot be banned. And so when people are coming after things like the AR-15, I have to say no because of Heller v. D.C. The other aspect is they settled the idea that it's the individual right to keep and bear arms, again, not outside of a well-regulated militia. What I'm very scared about is every time that a mass shooting or something happens, the government's response is to say, hey, we need to do a ban. The Second Amendment exists because of the need to protect the American people against possible government or tyranny. And I've lived and operated in countries where they disarmed the people, and and I saw what happened to them. Now, on the second part, yes, Congress should act when it comes to the mental health aspects and things like that, and I think that we're suffering from that. We saw during COVID the isolation of a lot of our young that is leading to depression and issues that may be the actual factor of why we're seeing mass shootings. But when it comes to actual gun legislation. I'm here to protect the American people from the government. That's why it exists. Never should the government be trying to remove guns from the people.
So how do you, never mind, can't. Recently, Congress, which hasn't updated immigration law since 1986, they recently negotiated a new plan that people in both parties said was acceptable. It seemed like the last moment that failed to pass. In your thinking, what does an immigration law need to contain for you to support it, to vote for it?
It has to, like, for me to support it, it has to be securing our border. It has to be, and if you're talking about the bipartisan immigration bill, it did not secure our border enough. We have millions and millions of undocumented or illegal aliens coming through this border with no, there's no vetting process. There's a lot of issues where they're being put in different states, but I think it's also the government failing them because they have no pathways to real citizenship either. So I do think that there's a twofold problem that we have. We need to secure that border, but at the same time, they need to do things correctly. I was a recruiter back in 2014 to 2017. I think one of the strongest programs we had was the MABNY program, and I think that I would like to bring that back, which is allowing a lot of the visa holders to become U.S. citizens by joining the United States military. I think that program is great. I think that we need to crack down on the use of asylum, for economic asylum is what they're doing, which is over 70% of the cases have been found to be fraudulent. So we need to crack down on that because it's costing our regular visa holders, whether it's the JFC, you name it, it's costing them tens of thousands of dollars for doing things the right way when certain individuals are using the asylum process incorrectly. But I think that, as I said, you're right, it's a bipartisan failure across the board. I think that we need to stop blaming each other and just get it done, and it starts with securing that border.
Do you have any thoughts on how you might create a path to citizenship for people who have lived here for many years?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of our issues are coming down to how our courts are designed. I mean, I went and visited 26 Federal Plaza, which is the Eastern District Court, coming to find out there's only a handful of magistrates or judges that deal with it with a staff of about 300. And you're expecting them to go through a docket of millions per year over there in the Eastern District. It makes no sense. We got to beef up our immigration courts to ease the dockets of some of our magistrates and judges. And we really need to if they've been here for a while, we need to be able to expedite that and help them out.
Okay. Wildfires, storms, and floods. They're expensive emergencies to deal with. And the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which is FEMA, they ran out of disaster relief funding in the middle of hurricane season. In 2024, Congress allocated nearly $200 million for pre-disaster mitigation, projects to lessen the impact of emergencies. Should the U.S. spend more on mitigation, including climate change mitigation?
I mean, if it comes to natural disaster relief, I'll agree with you on allocating money just to make sure that we take care of our citizens here. I also think that we have a lot of great NGOs that have stood up in that. I can name one, Team Rubicon, which is a bunch of volunteers that I've actually served with their CEO, Jacob Wood, and he goes around and helps out, to supplement the government. But in that sense, yes, we need to make sure that we're taking care of our American citizens for any form of natural disaster. Climate change is it's something where we have to look at it for the research purposes, look at it what we're, on. I'm very skeptical when it comes to some of it because some of it is used. Like I'll say Berks County, for instance, we have people citing climate change in the Inflation Reduction Act to have foreign actors buy up our farmlands and do things that are not actually about climate change. But I'm okay with the research portion as long as it's not like over like a ridiculous amount of money going into it and nothing is being done about it.
Okay, thank you. Our nation has more and more people living on the street because the U.S. doesn't have enough affordable housing. Is this something for Congress to address, or should this be left to the states? And if it comes up in Congress, what needs to be in the program for you to support it?
So I think Congress has a role to come down to the local through state and, really hold them accountable. I was just in Pottstown in the encampments the other day, and a lot of the homeless are blaming the local politicians, local through state, including my congresswoman or my opponent, Madeline Dean. There's 18 miles of encampments that go through Pottstown all the way to Reading. And I went across and talked to a whole lot of them. And so there's a failure at the local level to take care of our homeless out there. A lot of them are citing that they couldn't afford the rent or they couldn't afford certain basic things, and that's actually what made them homeless. And on top of that, I found out that a lot of what Mayor Cheryl Parker did was move a lot of the addicts from Kensington into the Pottstown encampment, and they're sitting out there with drug issues. And the local through state are not taking care of those people that are out there in those vulnerable environments. And so when I was out there, I've seen people with, they've taken Trank, which is a flesh-eating wound, and they're sitting out they have no hygiene, no anything. So yes, I think that it's incumbent upon somebody like me that's a servant leader that I want to tackle that issue. That's why I was out there amongst them. Mm-hmm. And if the local and state aren't going to do it, I'm going to come down here and put, I'm going to put a little bit of, pressure on them to do what they need to do right by the people.
Okay. Two of our Berks County League members have been working actively for the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment for more than 50 years. And people my age have been just waiting and waiting. The amendment actually reads, equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Do you believe that statement belongs in the U.S. Constitution?
I would agree with it. I think it's the same premises as what we see in the Civil Rights Act, that we should not be discriminating based upon any of the protected classes. So I would support anything that empowers and emboldens that.
Thank you.
I think that right now there is a huge attack on women when it comes to things that are inside the Civil Rights Act, Title IX. And I've seen, women lose scholarships, especially in my area. I've seen, women be degraded to no longer being called, they're actually being called birthing people or chest feeders or things that are just disrespectful or degrading, and they're being erased. And I think that, now's the time to stand up for women and say, even, if you talk about the right or choice, if outside of that, when you talk about what a woman is, it's a lot of women or their rights are being erased, and I feel like I need to stand up and protect it.
Should the amendment from 1973 be published as an amendment for the Equal Rights Amendment?
I think it's going to be hard to go through that route because you have to go through the whole ratification and you have to go through that whole process. But as I said, I would stand up for women and absolutely, I think it needs to be there.
Companies donate unregulated dollars to political causes as a form of protected free speech. The public cannot see these donations. Do you think these large corporate campaign contributions influence votes? And should we have more strict campaign finance laws? Why or why not?
Oh, yes. I'm dealing with it right now. My opponent in the FEC, it will show like 900 or 700 some thousand, but it's what you don't see. And there's open secrets to kind of see with the dark money behind it. I mean, my opponent has over 120 different corporate entities that add another million to her 700, 800,000. And I think that is the problem is I'm not up against the voters. I'm up against corporate America. Mm-hmm. And these elections are no longer really decided by the people when the incumbents don't come down and talk to the average person. They just talk to their mega donors, and that's usually what fuels their campaigns. And yes, I think that we need to remove money from politics.
Okay. The two major parties seem to have very different views on the economic impact of both tariffs and taxes. We'd like your view. How do tariffs affect our economy? Does it matter what country the product is from or what the product is? Does increasing or decreasing taxes on the rich or on large companies help or hurt us? Can you address that a little bit?
So I would say once again is I think that we had the constitutional understanding that our forefathers saw taxation as theft. Nowadays, I think that, the government's we have too much taxes. I would like to see a day and an age where income taxes or the 16th Amendment is repealed and we get rid of federal income tax. I think that taxation always hurts the American people because it's coming out of our pockets. In the sense of tariffs,
We have to wrap it up.
In the sense of tariffs, I think that it doesn't hurt as long as you're doing it wisely. But I'm all about America first. We need to let our economy work for itself, get manufacturing going, open up our energy sectors, and I think that's actually how we make America boom.
Thank you so much, Mr. Winkler, for sharing your views with us today. Viewers, please remember there is another candidate for the 4th Congressional District, Madeline Dean. You can see that interview on BCTV's website or the YouTube page. To check your voting status, go to vote.pa.gov. You can register, change your party, locate your polling place, or apply for an absentee or mail-in ballot. The deadline to register is October 21st. The deadline to apply for a mail-in ballot is October 29th. Then be sure to check the League's online voters guide, vote411.org. There you can confirm your voting district and get information on the candidates who will be on your ballot. Or you can contact Berks County Election Services, elections@countyofberks.com, phone number 610-478-6490. Thank you for watching Candidates Up Front. I'm Sue Ruth. Good day.